Hey everybody, it's Troy. Hey, listen, we're all still reeling from Ron DeSantis's terrible campaign announcement on Twitter Spaces. Just an absolute nightmare. Total technical issues, couldn't get started forever, multiple glitches, low attendance. He sounded boring. It was awful. It was completely awful. It was a disaster for Ron DeSantis, and already Trump's been making fundraising ads about it. We all saw the Dark Brandon response, which was great. But there's one portion of the announcement of the talk that he was giving on Twitter that really stood out to me, and it was about when he was talking about the book bans in Florida, and he just full on lied and claimed that the book bans in Florida were a hoax. Take a listen to this segment.
Yeah, so the whole book ban thing is a hoax. There's not been a single book banned in the state of Florida. You can go buy or use whatever book you want. What we have done is empowered parents with the ability to review the curriculum, to know what books are being used in school, and then to ensure that those books match state standards and are age and developmentally appropriate. So, for example, parents have flagged books in schools that, for example, teach middle school kids how to use sex apps, that provide graphic depictions of sex acts and sex toys for people as young as fifth grade. And so clearly that is not appropriate to be in a middle school classroom. And so parents object and the schools take them out.
The ability of parents to review public school curriculum and decide whether or not they want their kids reading certain books is not new. That's been a part of public education in this country for decades. Every state is the same way. You have the right to refuse a book for your kid, period. They didn't need to enact a law about that in Florida. Parents have rights in terms of what is taught to their children in public school curriculum. They can take their kids out of sex ed classes, for instance, if they don't want their children exposed to that. Parents already have parental rights in that sense. They have control over that curriculum. What the Florida book ban does is remove books from schools, from school libraries, based on arbitrary culture war ideology from MAGA fascists in Florida. It's just simply not true that these books weren't banned in Florida. They absolutely were. In the 21-22 school year, Florida banned 565 books from Florida public schools, largely claiming issues of wokeism, spreading racial diversity, but most especially they're coming after these books because they claim them to be pornographic. Some of the books that have been banned in Florida because of pornography or some sort of woke excuse were biographies of Hank Aaron and Roberto Clemente, and Tango Makes Three, which is a picture book about two male penguins. It's a cartoon book. Stella Brings the Family, When Wilma Rudolph Played Basketball, Forever by Judy Blume, The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, Toni Morrison's Bluest Eye, Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. These are great books. They're great books, and they're certainly not pornographic in nature. But these books fall under this classification that Ron DeSantis is trying to make people believe that they're removing pornographic material from K through 12 schools. When these laws went into effect in Florida, we all saw those pictures of teachers covering up their bookshelves with blankets or just full on taking all of the books out of their classroom because they needed to have those books reviewed to see if any of their titles in their classrooms were going to be on this banned list, because the teachers were afraid of getting in serious trouble if they accidentally had a book or taught a book or had even just a book in their classroom that was on these banned lists. It caused a tremendous amount of confusion and trepidation among teachers in Florida. It was a really scary time. If a student cannot get access to a book, that book is effectively banned. And these are not just about which books are taught in the curriculum. This is, again, about books that are even available for kids to access in school libraries and media centers, even books that are just happen to be on bookshelves in the teacher's classroom. There's nothing pornographic about these books. They just contain subject matter that's about the real world, acknowledging that gay people exist, acknowledging that Black people and other minorities have faced racism in this country. Basic facts about American history. And once again, parents have always had the right to prevent their students from being taught certain books. Parents have always had the right to say that their kids were not going to be exposed to a certain book for whatever reason. Most high school and middle school teachers and classrooms offer alternative books in that situation. If they're going to be reading a book that's known to be controversial, like To Kill a Mockingbird is known to be a fairly controversial book. If parents don't want their students reading To Kill a Mockingbird, most high school English teachers will have an alternative book or even several alternative books that child can read, because we respect parents' rights in education. It's already a thing. You didn't need to go in and take those books out of school because one parent is offended by the content of a book. Now we're removing it from the school entirely, and no children in that school now have access to that book because of one parent.
And on the racial history, we eliminated critical race theory from our K through 12 schools. That was the right thing to do. In other words, we're not going to take a kid who comes in at 6 years old and say they're an oppressor or oppressed based on what their race is. That's divisive. That's wrong. We're also not going to be teaching people to hate their country. But what we are going to do is teach the accurate history.
Then he goes on in this interview on Twitter talking about how they successfully banned CRT, critical race theory, from K through 12 classrooms. As we've said many times here on the MeidasTouch Network, critical race theory is a law school class that has never, ever been taught in K through 12 anywhere in the United States, period. You don't teach critical race theory in primary and secondary education. That's a grad school level class. That's a graduate school level class. There is no school in the United States of America that teaches critical race theory in K through 12. All they did, if they really thought that they were banning critical race theory, which is scary because they have absolutely no idea what critical race theory is, but all they did when they said that they banned critical race theory is create, once again, more confusion about which books could be taught, because now teachers have to be careful about any book that has any racial content whatsoever. It mentions race as a theme at all. Any book that discusses racial disparities or racial divisions within the United States or anywhere around the world could now be considered critical race theory under Ron DeSantis' law. So Ron DeSantis either has absolutely no idea what critical race theory is, which is unlikely because he is a lawyer, or he's just lying through his teeth about what critical race theory is and using this as he always has, and how all MAGA Republicans use the critical race theory issue as a made-up boogeyman to scare their far-right base, to scare racist white parents into believing that we are teaching white kids to hate themselves and black kids that they will never achieve anything in the United States of America, which is a blatant lie. That is not what critical race theory teaches. This is coming on the heels of the announcement from Ron DeSantis that they are killing diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in college campuses across the state of Florida at public colleges and universities. And Ron DeSantis has been firing presidents of universities, stacking boards of universities with his loyalists, who will then come in and hire DeSantis loyalists to be president of these universities. He's stacked the deck with local school boards, packing them full of his own supporters and operatives. He's trying to personally control what is taught in the state of Florida. He wants to have absolute control over both K through 12 education and higher education in the state of Florida. And as a result, Florida schools are suffering badly. Florida students are being put at a competitive disadvantage for colleges simply because they went to high school in Florida. Then at the end of this little exchange, at this section of the interview, you can hear Elon Musk come in at the end of DeSantis' rant, and he says something. Listen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I was actually under the impression that there were some books banned, so this is news to me.
Yes, Elon Musk had heard that there were books banned in Florida, and he's really happy that Ron DeSantis came in and cleared that up. No, Elon, you heard books were banned in Florida because they were banned in Florida. Even Elon Musk admits there at the end that he had heard about these book bans, because that's exactly what they are. If you're taking books out of schools and giving no children in the school access to those books, that is effectively a book ban. Not having access to these books affects the education level of students in this country. It results in a bad education, a lack of sufficient knowledge to succeed on a global stage. We are dumbing down our population. At the same time, students in China and the Asian tigers and in Europe are getting advanced education. They're ramping up their level of education. They're exposing their students to more material, more books, at the same time that we're scaling back. China is absolutely destroying us on the education front. And this century, we are going to see that bear out because our people, because the American people are just not educated enough to compete with countries like China, or they won't be in the next few decades. And it's because of this phony culture war, made up problem, fear of wokeness, fear of CRT nonsense that these people are using just to get elected, just to scare their base, and just to get their base to show up and vote. Ron DeSantis knows this is bullshit. He's not a stupid guy. He's a lawyer. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's using this as a political maneuver to get elected and to try and get elected president. And he can go on Twitter and lie his ass off as much as he wants about there being no book bans in the state of Florida and how Florida is supposed to be this bastion and beacon of freedom in the United States while he clamps down on civil liberties and civil rights and abortion rights and bodily autonomy and voting rights and makes generally everyone in Florida's life a living hell, particularly people from the LGBTQ plus community and minorities. And we are seeing that play out with NAACP's travel advisory warning Black Americans and LGBTQ plus people to not go to Florida because Florida has become hostile to African Americans and the LGBTQ plus community. And what's also incredibly ironic is that he's making these lying statements about not banning books in Florida on the 90-year anniversary of the book bans in Nazi Germany. 90 years ago this month is when the book bans in Nazi Germany began, the book burning celebrations, and the majority of those books burned in those rallies, in those Nazi rallies, were books that dealt with human sexuality, themes of homosexuality, and themes of racial inclusion and diversity. So it's chilling how we've come full circle on this, and MAGA Republicans are adopting tactics that we thought we'd said goodbye to, that we thought weren't part of society anymore, but we are going backwards as a society because of MAGA fascist leaders like Ron DeSantis. For MeidasTouch, this is Troy. Remember, smash that subscribe button to keep supporting independent media.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.